Hey guys, tonight we tumble back, way back, into the sun-scorched heart of ancient Mesopotamia. You blink, and suddenly the air smells like dry earth, smoldering charcoal, and something faintly fishy. That's not a metaphor. That's the Euphrates talking. You just woke up in Babylon, not the party one, not the pseudo-modern wonders of the world version. Number, you're in the laborers' quarter, dirt floor, straw mat, one cracked ceramic bowl for all your culinary ambitions. You stretch, but the mat has molded itself around your joints like a judgmental octopus. The ceiling above you is made of palm logs and hope. A spider lives in the corner, and you've named him Hammurabi. He's your roommate now. Good news, you're alive. Bad news, so are the mosquitoes, fleas, and that man with the cough who never quite stops coughing. You're pretty sure he died last week. Or he just took a nap. Hard to tell. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, post your location and the time. Is it already midnight where you are, or are we just getting started? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit up. Sort of. The ache in your back reminds you that last night's dinner of lentils and regret wasn't exactly a sleep aid. Outside, the city's already buzzing. Traders shouting, donkeys braying, someone yelling about grain weights, probably again. The city never sleeps, and neither do the bugs. You slide your feet into a pair of reed sandals that should have retired a month ago. The straps bite your ankles. The dirt sticks immediately. No socks, obviously. Just raw skin and the eternal hope that you won't step in something cursed, or sharp, or both. Your house, if we're feeling generous with the term, is a mud brick cube. There's a single window but no glass, just cloth. When it rains, which is rare, it leaks. When it's dry, which is always, it sweats dust. That's your weather forecast. Clay with a chance of coughing. The family next door is already arguing. Something about sheep. It's always about sheep. You wonder if their sheep are cursed too. Everything feels vaguely cursed here. It's hard not to take it personally. You stretch again. A new pain joins the chorus. Shoulder, hip, existential, all of the above. And you're only 22, which is 40 in Babylon years. Most people don't make it to the age where the Hammurabi Code feels like it was written about you. You reach for your morning ration of water, carefully stored in a ceramic jar sealed with clay. It tastes like the jar, with notes of yesterday's smoke and a hint of microbial roulette. You sip anyway, because that's what you do here. Sip, wince, survive. There's no mirror, but if there were, you'd see a face seasoned by sun and soot. Eyelids puffy, hair matted into something the priests would probably call omens in follicular form. You splash your cheeks with a handful of tepid water. It evaporates before you can feel clean. The marketplace calls. You need to work. You need barley. You need to not be accused of loafing. Loafers are fined, whipped, or worse, assigned to canal duty. Canal duty makes you wish for whipping. Outside, the heat is already creeping in, and it's not even mid-morning. The air is thick with shouting, sandal slap percussion, and the low hum of anxiety that comes from being constantly watched by both bureaucrats and indifferent gods. But you move forward, because that's what people did here. In Babylon, in the dust, in the noise, in the middle of history. And you haven't even had breakfast yet. You shuffle out of your mud brick sanctuary and into the living dream that is a Babylonian morning. It's not so much waking up as it is trading one type of suffering for a slightly louder one. The sun is already a vengeful orb in the sky. You squint. There's no escape, no curtains, no blinds, no snooze button. Just raw UV ambition filtered through ancient smoke and distant goat fumes. Your bed, if that's even the right term, is a clump of straw so worn down it's become self-aware. It squeaks when you move, not out of resistance, but out of protest. Your spine is in open rebellion. Every joint has filed a complaint. You slept beside a cracked jug of lentils and your cousin, who snores like a collapsing ziggurat. You once dreamed of privacy. That dream died, long ago. In Babylon, you sleep together, eat together, cough together, and inhale the shared aroma of feet, onions, and unresolved grudges. This morning, your back feels like you've been beaten with the Hammurabi Code. Tablet by tablet. You shift your shoulders. Something cracks. You decide not to investigate. The room is dim but warm. Too warm. Clay walls trap the heat like jealous lovers. The floor is packed dirt, hard and slightly sticky. There's a large ceramic bowl in the corner, half filled with wash water and half filled with something you try not to identify. Someone probably stepped in it during the night. You're supposed to wash your face here. You reconsider. Again. Your tunic lies crumpled at the base of the wall. You hold it up. It's less a garment and more a cautionary tale. Stained, crusty, and about one breeze away from falling apart. But hey, at least it's symmetrical. You throw it on. It sticks in all the wrong places. The sandals await. Reed. Flat. Flimsy. They were a gift from your uncle, who once fell into a wine vat and hasn't been the same since. You tie them on and immediately regret it. You're about to spend 12 hours upright in these, standing on brick, dirt, or some mix of both. Your arches are already sobbing. Outside the walls, the city is stirring. Chickens scream. Someone's beating laundry with a stick. Another person's arguing with a vendor about whether the figs are slightly too figgy. The air is dry and somehow damp. You didn't know that was possible. You trudge toward the work quarter. You are one of the fortunate. You're not a slave, just a free worker, which means you can technically say no to tasks. Once, loudly, and then get reassigned to shoveling donkey dung. You pass a neighbor's home. A baby wails inside. The mother chants a lullaby that's more threat than comfort. Another man pours ashes from his hearth into the street, standard Babylonian disposal method. You sidestep what looks like a burned fishtail and keep moving. A lot of the buildings look like yours. Mud brick, square, dry as old bread. Some are 2 stories. That's how you know someone has wealth. More bricks. Bricks equals power. You've got a wall that leaks when you cough near it. You rub your shoulder again. That old ache's back. Could be the straw. Could be the stone floor. Could be the deep existential strain of being a human spreadsheet cell in the massive ledger that is Babylonian labor. You finally reach your station, a narrow courtyard shared with 10 other workers and 2 donkeys. It's technically an open space, but it feels like an oven. Your boss is already barking instructions. He wants the ovens hot by midday. He wants the barley counted. He wants fewer excuses and more sweat, preferably in reverse order. You bow slightly, you nod, you join the others, because this is how Babylon greets you every morning, with sun, dust, and a question. Will you survive another day? And honestly, it's still too early to tell. You need to go, like, really go. And here's where Babylon's real character reveals itself, not in grand temples or elaborate cuneiform records, but in the humble, eternal struggle of waste disposal. Toilets. Or more accurately, the Babylonian version of toilets, which are less functional hygiene fixtures and more creative interpretations of where not to step. You scan your surroundings. No stalls, no signs, no privacy. Just a communal pit behind a wobbly screen of reeds, daring you to trust its structural integrity with your dignity. So you approach the area, clutching your stomach like a philosopher with questions. The floor is packed dirt. An optimistic term, really, since it's more like recycled footprints mixed with accident. You squat. You make peace with the flies. You wonder if they were born here, and if so, how many generations deep they are into this lifestyle. The pit itself is shallow. Too shallow. The kind of shallow that forces quick decisions and long-term regrets. Some homes have clay toilet seats, a circular slab placed over a hole. Luxury. You hover like a praying mantis with commitment issues. And don't even think about wiping. There is no toilet paper. Not now, not ever. Options include a reed, a worn cloth, or, if you're feeling wild, a smooth pottery shard. Yes, they even had a name for it. Ostraca. Paper cuts are bad. Pottery cuts in Babylon. That's a poem in pain. The rich. Oh, they have toilets. Real ones, connected to simple brick channels. Water trickles down via gravity, but even they are prone to backflow when the Euphrates gets moody. So nobody really wins. Historians still argue whether Babylonian elite plumbing was ahead of its time or just slightly more decorative suffering. The smell. Oh, friend. It's not just a smell, it's a legacy. It clings to you, seeps into your tunic, introduces itself before you do. People know where you've been, and for how long? You emerge slightly shorter in spirit, hoping your dignity is still somewhere in the reeds. You step around a chicken carcass. It's unclear whether it was dinner or just gave up. By the way, the street is not off limits either. Babylon is ancient but not shy. Public urination isn't frowned upon, it's expected. The corners of buildings, the edges of alleys, the shaded bits behind markets, they're all fair game. Everyone pretends they don't see. Everyone smells that they do. Sometimes slaves are tasked with cleaning. With what? Good question. Buckets of water if you're lucky, sand if you're not. Soap? Don't be silly. Soap is an imported luxury used in religious rituals or very bad dates. You start to understand why disease was a full-time job here. Why archaeologists find layers of filth baked into the city's very foundations. Why clay tablets included spells for stomach issues and instructions for avoiding demons in latrines. Yes, latrine demons. That's a thing. There are literally Babylonian curses carved into amulets designed to be worn while relieving yourself, because if the bacteria doesn't get you, maybe the ghost of constipation will. You return to the courtyard, a little less whole. Your co-workers say nothing. They don't need to. Everyone knows what just happened. It's part of life here, like sunburns, mosquito bites, or stepping on a sharp pebble just as you think you've found peace. And now that the deed is done, your stomach reminds you it's time for breakfast. But that, unfortunately, is its own separate tragedy. So, breakfast. You've done your business, publicly, emotionally, traumatically, and now you deserve something nourishing, or at least edible. But Babylon isn't interested in your culinary dreams. It offers, instead, pottage. A thick, gluey porridge of lentils, barley, and mystery vegetables, boiled until even the flavor gives up. You sit cross-legged with your clay bowl and a wooden spoon that still has traces of yesterday's meal because washing is a once-a-week hobby, not a daily ritual. Pottage doesn't taste bad. It doesn't really taste like anything. It's just warm and filling. And occasionally crunchy, which is concerning because it wasn't supposed to be. Could be sand, could be a beetle. Historians still argue whether ancient Babylonians considered insects protein or bonus flavoring. Either way, you chew carefully. Bread arrives too. It's flat, tough, and capable of doubling as a weapon. One archaeologist compared Babylonian flatbread to a pita pressed between two chariot wheels. It comes in squares or rounds, and if you're lucky, there's a hint of onion or garlic. If you're really lucky, you don't crack a molar. The rich enjoy honey-dipped pastries or date-filled rolls. You, meanwhile, are mastering the art of pretending crushed lentils taste like roasted lamb. The good news is you've stopped craving meat. The bad news is that's probably because your body no longer remembers what it is. Beer is served with breakfast, not for fun, for survival. The water here, it's just Euphrates juice, filtered through your optimism. So everyone drinks low-alcohol beer, murky, tangy, slightly chewy. Yes, chewy. It's called kaz, and you sip it through a long straw to avoid the clumps. It's not refreshing. It's not relaxing. It's wet. There are moments when the food surprises you. A stew with leeks, a skewer of grilled fish, a cube of sheep's cheese that didn't turn. But those are rare. usually reserved for festivals, sacrifices, or very specific bribes. You learn to live with hunger, not the dramatic storybook kind, but the subtle background hum that's always there. You go to sleep thinking about food and wake up wondering if someone stole your breakfast grain allotment. You start to guard your bowl like it holds national secrets. Meal prep? Not really a thing. You cook in clay pots over open fires, stirring with sticks and instinct. Salt is a luxury. Spices are exotic. Recipes are memorized or mumbled, passed down by people who died of undercooked goat. Sometimes you eat communal style, hunched in circles, tearing flatbread, dipping into shared bowls. It's a social moment until someone sneezes into the pot. Then it becomes a crisis. You see cooks at the Ziggurat's temple kitchen sweating over sacrificial meals. They get better ingredients, sometimes even dates and nuts. You consider converting to priesthood for access to better lentils. Food preservation is creative. You dry fruits, smoke fish, and bury jars in cool earth. Once, someone tried to ferment figs in a leather pouch. The resulting sludge exploded. You still remember the sound. Still, food is central to Babylonian life. Not because it's delicious, but because it's survival. Every day you chase calories like they owe you rent. Every meal is a negotiation between what you want and what you have. One time, you drop your bread. It lands in dust. You pause, then pick it up, brush it off, and eat it. Because that's what you do now. You don't eat to live. You endure to eat. Clothing, the grand, itchy canvas of your suffering. You tug on your tunic, scratchy linen if you're lucky, wool if the gods are punishing you. It's stiff from dried sweat and dust, dyed the faint beige of defeat. You've worn it every day for a month. It remembers things you don't. There's no wardrobe, no change of outfit. There's just this one tunic, a sash that's seen better centuries, and a pair of sandals that might have once belonged to a camel. You dream of fashion, but the Babylonian aesthetic is less seasonal chic and more functional bandage. Clothes exist to cover the essentials and maybe signal your profession if you're fancy. Dye, rare and expensive. Purple, reserved for royalty. Blue, maybe, if you crushed enough lapis lazuli and had a moral disregard for gemstone pricing. Historians still argue whether average Babylonians had access to dyed cloth or if those fragments we find were just for the elite. Either way, your wardrobe is dirt-colored, and your undergarments are theoretical. Parasites love you. Fleas, lice, and mites consider you prime real estate. They crawl, bite, and throw parties in your armpits. You scratch discreetly at first, then openly. Eventually, you stop noticing the difference between an itch and an emotion. You don't wash your clothes. You can't. Water is for drinking, barely, not laundry. There are no soaps, just sand if you're feeling exfoliative. If your tunic begins to walk away on its own, you beat it against a rock and hope it surrenders. Shoes are aspirational. Most people go barefoot unless the terrain threatens to amputate. You get a pair of leather sandals, cracked and gnarled, held together by optimism and vine. After 1 week, you name them. After 2, you bury them ceremonially when they break. In winter, you freeze. No coats, no hoods, no thermal anything. Just layers of sadness. You wrap yourself in old cloths, animal skins if you can find them, or just huddle like a cold burrito. In summer, you melt. Sweat stains grow complex and expressive, like abstract art. Your tunic sticks to you like guilt, and chafing becomes a lifestyle. You see the nobles walking by in robes stitched with gold thread, perfumed, gliding in sandals that don't scream in pain. You nod politely, then curse them in Sumerian under your breath. Headwear, a scarf if you're farming, maybe a headband if you're religious. Hats are mostly symbolic, like a pointy fish-shaped crown if you're a high priest, or a helmet if you're doomed to die in a siege. Women wear long dresses, technically more breathable, practically just as itchy. They tie them with ropes, decorate them with beads if they're lucky, but they also only get one. and they're just as infested as yours. Fringe fact: archaeologists found evidence that Babylonians may have used beeswax as a hair product. Yes, beeswax, because nothing says "I'm surviving" like flammable grooming. Clothing repairs are DIY. You own a needle the size of your thumb and string made from gut. Every rip is a project. Every patch tells a story. Some of those stories are tragic. One time you stitched your tunic to your own leg. Still, clothing is identity. A slave's ragged hem speaks volumes. A merchant's trim says he handles silver. A soldier's belt means don't mess with him unless you're in the mood to be flattened. There's no privacy while dressing, no modesty, just fabric, bodies, and the shared understanding that everyone stinks equally. You used to care about how you looked. Now, if your tunic is facing the right direction and not on fire, you call it a good day. Babylon teaches you humility in thread count. And the lesson is this: when in doubt, wrap it tighter and pretend the itch means it's working. Your teeth hurt, but that's normal. You haven't known a day without mouth pain in years. Welcome to ancient Babylon, where dental hygiene is a myth and molars are basically countdown timers to agony. You wake up to a dull throb behind your eye. That's not a hangover, it's a rotting incisor. You run your tongue over a jagged edge, part of a tooth that surrendered in the night. Another casualty in your face's slow rebellion against food. Toothpaste doesn't exist. Toothbrushes? Fantasy. What you might do, if you're rich or ambitious, is chew on a frayed stick. The Babylonians called them miswak, nature's way of saying, try again. Historians still argue whether these twigs were used for religious ritual, dental scraping, or just boredom. Either way, you gnaw one every morning like it's a punishment. There's no dentist, not unless you count the local barber, who also does amputations and possibly exorcisms. Toothache? He'll take it out. No anesthetic, no numbing, just two strong men, a bronze tool that looks like it was made for cattle, and your screams echoing through the clay walls. You once saw a man faint from a tooth extraction, not from blood, but from relief. Your breath? Let's just say it doubles as a defense mechanism. Halitosis isn't just common, it's practically fashionable. People lean back mid-conversation and politely angle their heads. You grow self-conscious, then remember everyone smells like death and fermented onions anyway. Your gums bleed when you chew. Cavities are treated with indifference. Abscesses swell until they rupture. Sometimes your face swells on one side. You joke it's your royal profile. No one laughs. Mainstream historical fact: the Babylonians did write medical texts. They even listed over 100 tooth-related prescriptions, from plant-based poultices to prayers invoking gods like Ninisina. One tablet literally reads, "If a tooth causes a man pain," followed by instructions involving beer, herbs, and divine pleading. A fringe tidbit? One cure involved stuffing crushed mouse bones into the cavity. Because clearly, the problem wasn't infection, it was a lack of rodents in your face. You eat soft food now, mostly because hard food fights back. Bread can chip enamel. Nuts are a gamble. You once bit into a date pit and saw stars. You've since declared war on dates. Sometimes you try to rinse your mouth with warm beer. It doesn't help, but it feels vaguely hygienic. Other times, you just press a wet cloth to your cheek and cry like a dramatic temple statue. There are no flossers, no mint rinses, no appointments, just slow decay, early tooth loss, and the knowledge that smiling too wide could cause structural failure. Pain becomes your companion. It whispers during meals, screams during sleep, and dances when you bite the wrong way. You try to distract yourself, tell stories, carve tablets, watch pigeons, but the pain is always there, humming under your skull. Medicine? Sure, if by medicine you mean burnt incense and goat bile. Babylonian healers were smart, but bacteria hadn't RSVP'd to history yet. They believed pain came from demons. So you sleep with an amulet around your neck and hope the cavity ghost gets bored. You envy children with baby teeth. You envy anyone with all their teeth. You even envy the statues, perfect smiles, zero nerves. You begin to talk less, smile less. You chew on one side only. Your jaw is uneven. People say you've become quiet, philosophical. You just don't want your molars to explode. Some nights you dream of dentists, clean tools, soft lighting, chairs that recline. You wake up crying. You rinse your mouth with warm rainwater and promise your teeth they'll make it through the week. They won't. You work every single day. That's not an exaggeration. There's no weekend in Babylon. There's not even a concept of a break. The idea of free time is something the gods must have kept for themselves. You roll out of your straw mat with a spine that creaks like a splintered cart axle. Your teeth still throb, but now it's time for real suffering. The sun isn't even up yet, and your body already knows what's coming. Fields, dust, heat, and repetition. Oh, the repetition. You're a laborer, which sounds noble, but mostly means you haul stuff until your muscles scream, and then you haul a bit more. You carry clay bricks for the ziggurat. You shovel irrigation ditches. You plant barley with a pointed stick, and then pray the Euphrates doesn't decide to flood and ruin your entire week. Historians still argue whether Babylonian laborers were technically slaves or just citizen workers with no rights and infinite obligations. Either way, you're not getting paid in silver, you're paid in grain. Which is great, unless you are hoping to not eat porridge every day until you die. Your tools are primitive. A wooden hoe, a stone-headed mallet. Your hands, blistered and swollen, have become tools in themselves. You don't wear gloves, you don't wear boots, you wear pain. Women? They work too. There's no sitting around the courtyard sipping date wine while watching the palm trees sway. They carry water, grind flour, tend goats, raise children, clean whatever can be cleaned, which isn't much, and do it all in the same filthy linen shift every single day. Children. Oh, they help. You start apprenticing around age 5. Not in a cute way, with lathes or scrolls, but in a get that bucket and haul it kind of way. They sweep, they carry, they get yelled at. They cry. You cry. Everyone cries, but softly. Crying too loudly draws attention, and attention draws extra work. Mainstream historical fact. Babylon had one of the earliest systems of state-sponsored labor. They called it the Ilku system. Citizens owed labor in exchange for land or protection. You don't choose to work. You just owe it. A fringe tidbit. One clay tablet reveals a worker begging the overseer to delay their assignment due to extreme diarrhea. We salute this unsung hero for trying. The workday begins at dawn and ends at... No one really knows. The sun tells you when to start. Your supervisor tells you when to stop. And by supervisor, we mean a guy with a stick who thinks yelling builds morale. You get 2 breaks, not by law, by physical necessity. 1 to eat, if you remembered to bring food. 1 to stop passing out. You sit on a warm rock and count the cuts on your forearms, then go back to hauling mud like nothing happened. Your spine curves, your joints grind. You start walking like your dad did, and he died at 36. There are no labor laws. There's no HR department. Your only support system is the guy next to you, and he's trying to pace himself to outlive his hernia. Some jobs seem easier. You envy scribes, sitting all day, carving signs into clay with a fancy stylus. But then you remember their fingers cramp, their eyes strain, and they get beaten when they make mistakes. Suddenly your muddy ditch feels slightly less miserable. You fantasize about being a priest, or a merchant, or someone important, but then you remember those roles require schooling, status, or at least not being born into a family of brick haulers. You stare at the ziggurat rising above you, huge, tiered, unreachable. A monument built by men like you, dying one cracked vertebra at a time. Every muscle burns. Every day ends with you collapsing in a heap, eyes half closed, skin coated in dust and sweat, and some mystery insect you don't even bother to brush away anymore. You're not lazy. You're just alive. And that's hard enough. You dream of clouds, cool mist, a soft breeze. But when you open your eyes, It's the heat that greets you, like someone left the oven door open and forgot to mention you're inside it. Babylon isn't shy about the weather. It doesn't nudge you awake. It slaps you with a dry hand and dares you to do something about it. Summer in the Mesopotamian plain is a masterclass in human fragility. The air is so dry it seems to flake your soul. Sand works its way into your clothes, your hair, your teeth. You sweat, but the moment it appears, the sun snatches it away, leaving you crusted in a salty shimmer like a poorly seasoned steak. You live in a mud brick house. Sounds quaint, right? It's not. The walls are good at trapping heat. So good, in fact, that by mid-morning your home feels like a terracotta casserole dish. There's no insulation, no airflow, just you, panting like a fish, trying to convince yourself that a breeze might visit today. Spoiler, it won't. Your clothes do not help. The flax tunic that hangs from your shoulders, it's like wearing a damp napkin. Thin, stained, and increasingly see-through. You could technically take it off, but then you'd just burn faster. And modesty rules still apply, even in a city that worships fertility goddesses. Now let's talk winter. Historians still argue whether ancient Babylon's winters were mild or miserable. But for you, they're a personal betrayal. It's not the snow, there isn't any. It's the cold mud. The air turns sharp. Rain turns your home into a soggy tomb. Your straw mat becomes a sponge. And you become one with your blanket, praying it holds out one more night. No central heating, no fireplace, just body heat and hope. You curl up with your family like a pile of undercooked breadsticks and pretend it's cozy. Someone coughs. The baby cries. The lice continue their party. Fringe tidbit. Some clay tablets suggest Babylonians believed spirits of cold winds were angry demons. Honestly, that checks out. If you've ever tried sleeping in a sodden room while a demonic draft whistles over your kidneys, you'd believe in wind demons too. Rain is your enemy. It leaks through the roof. It floods the streets. It turns your dirt floor into a slippery bog. You try to sleep with one hand keeping your blanket above water. You fail. Now your only dry sock is floating somewhere near the cooking fire. You might think summer is easier. At least it's dry, right? Wrong. Summer comes with bugs. Mosquitoes large enough to require names. And they love you. They find you in your sleep, during lunch, even in the one place you thought was safe, your outhouse. You itch. Constantly. You slap. Pointlessly. You scratch yourself like a street dog and wonder if the gods would notice if you sacrificed a flea. Your skin cracks in winter and bubbles in summer. Your hair dries out. Your lips split. And yes, your sweat does leave mysterious white lines on your tunic. You are a walking salt flat. Historical fact: Babylonian priests tracked seasonal changes meticulously for agriculture and astrology. But despite all their sky watching, they never predicted just how much it would suck to sleep through a humid night in July with a sore back and a weevil infestation. Your house? It offers no escape. It's not a fortress. It's a glorified oven in summer and a damp rag in winter. You build a fire in a clay pot, hoping it will warm the room. Instead, it smokes you out like a ham. And don't forget the floods. The Euphrates is fickle. One season, it waters your barley. The next, it creeps into your bedroom like it owns the place. You once had to sleep with your sandals on the ceiling beam. That wasn't a dream. That was Tuesday. In the end, weather isn't just part of your life. It is your life. It dictates when you work, how much you sleep, whether your food spoils, and whether your family coughs themselves into next year. You don't check the forecast, you just open the door, sniff, and brace yourself. And the irony? You still pray for rain, because without it, your crops die and you starve. Babylon teaches balance, mostly through trauma. Water. Glorious, precious, treacherous water. You'd think living in a city beside the Euphrates would make thirst a non-issue. Oh no. Welcome to Babylon, where water is everywhere, and yet somehow never where you want it, when you want it, or how you need it. It's like dating a very passive-aggressive river. Your day starts with water, not by drinking it. Don't be ridiculous. First, you check the clay jar. If it's full, congratulations. It means someone in your house braved the queue at the canal before sunrise. If it's empty, well, you're going to learn how dehydration makes your head feel like a slowly deflating goat bladder. Now, let's talk about the drinking process. You scoop it from a cistern, or if you're feeling adventurous, directly from the canal. The color? Somewhere between beige and mystery stew. The taste? Earthy, with notes of goat hair and the faint aroma of regret. The good news? Boiling helps. The bad news? Firewood is scarce, so sometimes you just drink it anyway. Historians still argue whether the Babylonians truly understood germ theory. You don't need an argument, you need a toilet, immediately. Fringe tidbit. Ancient texts mention that Babylonians used copper vessels to store water, possibly to reduce contamination. They may not have known why it helped, but copper ions do kill bacteria. Of course, if you don't have a copper jug, you're back to drinking whatever your neighbor's sheep bathed in. Bathing is an event. You don't just strip and splash. You plan. First, you find a time when the bathhouse isn't packed with every sweaty person in your district. Then you pray to every god you know that the water is somewhat clean and the roof isn't caving in. Public bathhouses are social hubs, meaning privacy is non-existent and judgment is free-flowing. Water is fetched in buckets, heated if you're lucky. Then you use a strigil, basically a bronze scraper, to remove sweat, oil, and existential shame. Soap? Ha! Try animal fat mixed with ash. Now your skin smells like roasted goat and despair. But hey, at least you're clean. For 5 minutes. Then the dust gets you. Again, and again, and again. Cleanliness is temporary. Dirt is forever. Still, you're encouraged to bathe regularly. Why? Because dirty people offend the gods, and also because the neighbors start whispering. You want to get invited to that barley beer gathering next week? You better not stink like yesterday's fish market. Of course, there are risks. Water opens your pores, which, according to ancient belief, invites disease to crawl inside you like a party guest who never leaves. So bathing too much, dangerous. Bathing too little, social suicide. Welcome to Babylon's hygiene paradox. Damned if you do, itchy if you don't. You don't get your own towel. You don't get a clean robe. And if you drop your one pair of sandals into the canal again, you'll spend the week navigating street muck barefoot, dodging animal droppings, broken pottery, and sharp stones with the grace of a wounded flamingo. Disease follows the water. Cholera wasn't named yet, but the symptoms? Oh, you know them. So do your neighbors. Diarrhea? Common? Worms? Constant? Some days you wonder if your insides are holding a secret wrestling match. Historical fact. Babylon's engineers built advanced aqueducts and canal systems, distributing water for agriculture and domestic use. Their ingenuity is impressive. Their hygiene infrastructure, however, left plenty of room for microbial freeloaders. And when the Euphrates floods, it doesn't knock, it barges in. Your garden becomes a swamp. Your pantry becomes a breeding ground for amphibians. You once saw a frog wearing your sandal. You didn't ask questions. You rely on ritual and prayer to stay safe. Offerings to Ea, god of water, are supposed to keep the floods at bay. But even the gods seem confused about the plumbing situation. In the end, water sustains you. It feeds your barley, cools your fevered skin, and carries waste away, mostly. But it also tests you, breaks you, leaks into your roof, steals your clean clothes, drowns your bread. You respect it. You fear it. You use it sparingly. And when it's gone, you panic. Because in Babylon, water is never just water. It's survival. It's suffering. It's sacred. And you, parched and paranoid, are just trying not to drink something that used to be a camel bath. Hey guys, tonight we travel back, way back, to the Han Dynasty. No Wi-Fi, no toothbrush, no rights. Just you, barefoot and itchy, waking up somewhere in the dust of ancient China around 150 BCE. You're a peasant, probably one of 50 million. But don't worry, your job is essential. Planting millet and slowly dissolving from back pain. The good news? You're alive. The bad news? So are fleas, bureaucracy, and seasonal famine. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know your location and local time down in the comments. I love seeing how far this sleepy little corner of history travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up in a Han village as the rooster screams directly into your dreams. It's not your rooster, it's communal, like the toilet and the shovel and the sense of overwhelming despair. Your sleeping mat is woven straw, mostly horizontal, sometimes damp. No pillows, no support. The only thing cushioning your body is the exhaustion from the day before. You try to roll over, but the mat crackles like firewood and reminds you, yep, your shoulder still doesn't work. Or maybe that's just what being 23 feels like in the Han dynasty. Basically elderly. Your house is one room. Mud brick walls, wooden beams, a thatched roof that's half roof, half draft delivery service. There's a central hearth that smokes more than it cooks, and it's probably still warm from last night's attempt to boil rice. The floor is dirt. Not a little dirty, just dirt. If it rains, it's a puddle. If it's dry, it's a dust bowl. Either way, your bare feet don't thank you. You live with your extended family. All of them. That includes your uncle who coughs like he's auditioning for a ghost story, your aunt who mutters about astrology, and your cousin who might have stolen your last dumpling. You also share your space with chickens, who definitely did. There's no privacy. You wake up in a pile of limbs, warm breath, and the soft clucking of poultry rights violations. If you want to change clothes, too bad. You only have one outfit. So unless you've mastered the ancient art of public nudity confidence, you just dust off yesterday's grime and keep going. The air smells like life, in the worst way. Smoke, sweat, rice, dampness, maybe something died in the corner, hopefully just a beetle, and the distant scent of manure from your neighbor's yak. That's right, he has a yak. Status. You hear someone already moving outside. Probably your mother grinding millet, or your father sharpening something terrifyingly ambiguous. Time doesn't work the same here. There are no clocks, just the sun, the shadows, and the screech of obligation. You stretch. Every joint crackles like ancient parchment. You're 20-something, but you have the spine of a seasoned philosopher. Not from reading scrolls, though, from squatting, lifting, carrying, squatting again, and then regretting all of it during the 5 minutes you're allowed to lie still. You duck your head outside, and the cool morning air slaps you awake with a soft layer of dust. The sky is orange, the road is dirt, and the neighbors are already arguing. Something about goats, or taxes, or goat taxes. Who knows? Historians still argue whether most Han peasants were truly as destitute as the records suggest, or whether we've romanticized their misery in hindsight. But standing here now, barefoot and itchy, listening to someone yell about a broken hoe, you're pretty sure the misery was very real, and not at all poetic. Your stomach growls. So does a dog. Could be yours. Could be someone else's. Could be a wolf. Welcome to the suburbs, Han style. You step back inside, trying not to stub your toe on a jug of water that hasn't been cleaned since the Qin dynasty. You grab your belt, which is actually a rope, and your robe, which used to be beige and now identifies as ambiguous brown. You're awake. Congratulations. You've made it to the starting line of a day you absolutely didn't sign up for. The first breath you take outside is technically air. It just happens to come pre-seasoned with dust, ash, animal hair and a vague hint of fermented tofu from 3 huts down. Welcome to another glorious Han morning. You shuffle toward the communal courtyard where 5 other families also pretend they're alone. It's not even sunrise, and someone's already yelling at a pig. Another person is emptying a chamber pot into a ditch. The pig, honestly, seems like it has the better gig. Your body still aches from yesterday's efforts in the field. You worked until your hands felt like dry roots. Your spine, it's turned into a polite suggestion. As you walk, your knees creak like the wooden carts the merchants drag through the town square. Historians still debate whether Han peasants suffered more from malnutrition or chronic musculoskeletal wear. But let's be honest, why not both? You find your families grinding stone and resume your favorite morning activity, pulverizing millet into the dust that will become breakfast sludge. It's a circle of futility, round and round, like time. Or the bureaucracy. Because yes, you also owe taxes, not in coins. Who do you think you are, an aristocrat? You pay in grain, in labor, in back pain. A fly lands in your eye. You blink. It wins. Nearby, your mother is brushing rice husks from a woven mat with what is, in modern terms, the most ineffective broom in the history of sweeping. It's a branch, a literal branch. She offers a grunt, which is basically good morning around here. You nod back in peasant. Breakfast is boiling on the hearth, a term that suggests something exciting. It's not. It's congee. Watery, bland, occasionally crunchy from something that probably shouldn't be crunchy. You slurp it down like your life depends on it, because it does. You eat while squatting. Chairs are for royalty, monks, and your uncle when he's pretending his hemorrhoids are divine punishment. You eat quickly because your little brother is eyeing your portion like a hawk with a grudge. The walls of your home don't block sound. You hear everything. Arguments, sneezes, mysterious clanking. Someone's already reciting poetry in the distance. Must be the scholar's son again. You hate him. He gets to learn characters. You get to carry buckets. At some point, a government inspector will wander through the village, pretending to care about your crops while noting whether your taxes are paid. He might carry a bamboo tally sheet. He might also carry a stick. You try not to make eye contact. Eye contact invites responsibility, or suspicion, or worse, conscription. You briefly consider pretending to be dead, but that trick only works once. Maybe twice if you're lucky and covered in enough straw. You tie your robe with a loose knot and head out toward the terraced fields. Millet doesn't plant itself. Well, actually, some of it does, because birds steal it, poop it, and accidentally invent random agriculture, but that's beside the point. The earth is cracked. It hasn't rained in weeks. Your feet leave prints in the dry soil like you're writing a novel no one will read. You join a dozen others, all bent like question marks. This is the posture of the Han dynasty. Humble, aching, eternally hopeful, and just a little bit soggy from foot sweat. A passing cart reminds you of the elite, those who live in the cities with walls, real roofs, and actual toilets. You dream of Luoyang, of silk robes, of maybe eating something that once had a heartbeat. But you're not dreaming now. You're hoeing a field, dodging ants the size of regrets, and wondering how your ancestors managed to invent paper but not hammocks. Still, there's beauty. You glance up. The morning mist is lifting, revealing the distant mountains, craggy outlines like sleeping dragons. Birds flutter. A child laughs. A goat screams. Balance. Mainstream records say Han peasants were the backbone of the empire, which is funny because yours is broken. Quirky tidbit? There's a thing called ancestor tablets, tiny plaques at home altars where your family honors the dead. If you break a tool or swear too loudly, you're supposed to apologize to them. You mutter an apology, just in case. You glance at the sun. It's still morning. Your stomach is already planning a mutiny. The day has barely begun. Let's talk about your first real emergency of the day. No, not another tax visit. Not another broken hoe handle. It's something more urgent, more explosive. You need to use the toilet. Except, spoiler alert, there isn't one. Not unless you count a hole in the ground, shared by a rotating cast of villagers, chickens, and existential despair. Toilets in the Han Dynasty are a social experiment, and often a small public event. You shuffle toward the latrine pit, clutching your stomach like it's a bag of loose marbles. In theory, your village has a designated waste area, just past the pigs, before the bamboo grove, and slightly downwind of shame. In practice, it's a shallow trench that occasionally collapses during rainstorms, which makes every visit a gamble. Will it hold, or will it be your turn to become part of the fertilizer? The latrine consists of 2 wobbly planks set over the pit. You squat. You hope. You try not to breathe. There is no privacy. You can make intense eye contact with 3 other people also squatting, each of you pretending this moment isn't happening. No toilet paper, of course. That's a Han-era fantasy. What you get is bamboo slips, thin, sharp-edged, and spiritually offensive. It's like trying to wipe with an angry bookmark. Some villagers use straw. The brave use leaves. The desperate just waddle away and pretend nothing happened. Historians still argue whether silk scraps were ever used for wiping in elite homes. But you don't live in an elite home. You live with splinters. You stand, adjust your robe, and avoid looking down. No one ever looks down. The smell follows you like a loyal dog with bad boundaries. Occasionally, a government edict suggests composting waste to fertilize crops. So congratulations, you're now part of the food cycle. Literally. The good news? You're sustainable. The bad news? So is the dysentery. Let's say, in your moment of weakness, you decide to go closer to your house for convenience. That's not illegal, but it is frowned upon. You'll probably be scolded by someone's grandmother, who has very strong feelings about hygiene for someone with 0 soap and a pet duck in her kitchen. Urban dwellers, if you ever get to visit a real city, might boast about their toilets, which are fancy ceramic pots that get emptied into the street. Yep. Just flung out the window like confetti made of bad decisions. You'd better duck, or not inhale, or both. Some wealthier neighborhoods have stone toilets with drainage systems. The problem? That drainage goes straight into the river, which is also where you collect drinking water. You've now entered what scholars call the loop of doom. Drink water, use water, contaminate water, repeat until revolution, or cholera. But back to your village. Some of the wealthier families have slightly raised outhouses. These are status symbols. If you're lucky, you get to clean one with your hands and a bucket. A bucket you will then carry past the neighbors while trying to look cool and failing, because everyone knows what's in the bucket, leeway. Speaking of buckets, nighttime toileting is a unique kind of misery. You don't want to stumble through a snake-infested field in the dark. So you do your business in a clay pot inside the hut, shared by 6 people, a chicken, and the ghost of fresh air. In the morning, someone's job is to empty it. Often it's the youngest child, or you, or both, if fate has decided you need character development. It's during this morning ritual that you understand the core philosophy of Han peasantry: endurance. You don't solve problems, you survive them. One bucket at a time. To lighten the mood, here's your quirky fact of the day. Some Han scholars believed that emotions could affect your digestion. If you're sad, your spleen might rebel. Angry, your intestines might throw a tantrum. So yes, emotional constipation was very much a thing. You finish your business, sort of wash your hands with water that looks like it's already been used twice, and mentally prepare for another 14 hours of squatting. But this time, in the fields. The smell never fully leaves. It lingers on your robe, in your hair, deep in your soul. You consider burning everything. You can't. Firewood is for cooking. Suffering is for character. You walk back past the communal pigs. One snorts in your direction. It smells better than you. You nod respectfully. You will never take modern plumbing for granted again. Time for breakfast. Or, more accurately, the ceremonial act of pretending to eat. You shuffle toward the hearth, where a pot has been simmering for several hours, maybe days. It's hard to tell. This mysterious concoction is pottage, a noble name for what is, essentially, edible mud. You stare into the pot. It stares back. Pottage is made from whatever the village hasn't run out of yet. Some old millet, maybe a wrinkled turnip, possibly last week's cabbage leaf. It's thick, greyish, and faintly judgmental. You scoop a bowl, careful not to dislodge the film growing on top. The smell is earthy, if by earthy you mean haunted swamp. You bring it to your lips and take a bite. It's not good, but it is technically food. You chew with the enthusiasm of someone chewing a contract they didn't read. Next comes the bread, or the thing that claims to be bread. It's a solid wedge of millet flour and crushed hopes, baked until it resembles a paving stone. You knock it against the table. It makes a noise. You knock it against your own skull. Same noise. Congratulations, you now own a medieval concussion simulator. Some days, to stretch the flour, people mix in powdered tree bark or ground straw. You eat it anyway, because hunger makes bad decisions look reasonable. The bread doesn't crumble. It crumbles you. You glance at the drink options. Water? Not unless you want to relive your toilet trauma. So you grab the safer alternative, beer. Not the frothy IPA kind, no. This is unfiltered, lukewarm millet beer, chunky with grain particles and existential regret. But it's fermented, which means it's less likely to kill you. It might even dull your memories of breakfast. Cheers. Historians still argue whether meat was a weekly, monthly, or purely ceremonial treat. Either way, there's none today. The village had a pig last week, but it escaped. Rumor has it, the pig now lives a better life in the next province. Smart pig. You slurp more pottage, now slightly cooler, and somehow more gelatinous. Occasionally, a beetle floats to the top. You remove it. That was the protein. Lucky you. A nobleman might enjoy rice, pickled vegetables, even spices. But you are not a noble. You are a cog in the agricultural machine. Your spice rack includes ash, sadness, and the occasional rogue garlic clove if someone smuggled it in. Quirky tidbit time. Ancient Han cookbooks, yes, they existed, described methods for cooking bear paws and leopard meat. So, if you ever find yourself in the capital with a generous sponsor and a death wish, culinary adventures await. But here, in the fields, you'd settle for an unburnt onion. Meals are communal. You eat sitting on your heels, surrounded by others doing the same. No utensils, just fingers, chopsticks, and the ever-present challenge of keeping your sleeve out of the stew. Someone sneezes into the pot. You try not to cry. One of the elders tells a story about a festival feast they attended as a child. There was duck, honeyed pastries, wine. Everyone sighs. That was before taxes increased, before the locusts, before everything tasted like boiled regrets. Your bowl is empty. You scrape the sides. Nothing remains but a thin film of starchy disappointment. The hunger is not gone, merely distracted. You consider chewing on the bowl. It has more flavor than the bread. Back to beer. It's the only thing with taste. It's also slightly hallucinogenic if you drink enough. Some villagers use it as medicine. Others use it as motivation. Today, you use it as both. You hear a rumor that a caravan from the west brought spices, pepper, maybe even cinnamon. But that's a fantasy. Real spice is reserved for nobility and bribes. You're lucky if your meal doesn't fight back. You burp. It tastes like defeat. Still, breakfast is over. You feel heavier, not from food, but from knowledge. You know the day will demand more than your stomach can offer. You rise. You wobble slightly. The beer is working. Good. Remember that bread? It's also used to patch roofs and stop door drafts. Versatile. You step outside, chewing the last crust. It could survive a siege. You won't. Clothes. Let's talk about them, though clothes might be a generous term. What you're wearing is more like a long-term hostage situation with fabric. Your outfit, lovingly called a shenyi, is a single-piece robe wrapped around your body and tied with a belt. It was once white. Now it's the color of regret, mixed with months of hard labor and zero laundry. You've worn it every day for a year, maybe longer. It knows your secrets. The material, coarse hemp or rough wool, both of which itch like betrayal. No undergarments, because undergarments are for emperors and poets. You adjust your collar, trying to ease the scratchy neckline. It doesn't help. You are constantly reminded that your skin is both an organ and a battlefield. Washing clothes is a theoretical exercise. Water is precious. Soap is mythical. And if your garment finally begins to fall apart, congratulations. You now own 2 half garments. You tie them together and pretend it's fashion. Historians still argue whether commoners truly had only one set of clothes, or if they rotated between 2 rags with enthusiasm. The evidence leans toward yes, and both were bad. Wealthy families had silks dyed in deep indigo or crimson, but you're not rich. You're wearing poverty as a fabric. Shoes? Ah, you mean the straw sandals held together with more hope than fiber. You slide your feet in. One toe pops out. Your heel touches the ground directly. You sigh. These shoes double as exfoliators. If your feet still have skin by sunset, they win a prize. Lice are your closest companions. You don't remember when they arrived, but they refuse to leave. Occasionally, you feel a tickle near your scalp, which means it's time for another thrilling game of, is it alive or is it imaginary? Spoiler, it's alive. You try to smooth the robe's sleeves. They're stiff with yesterday's sweat. The sun hasn't even risen fully, and you're already damp. Somehow, it always clings in the wrong places. Armpit, damp. Elbow, itchy. Back, mystery spot. Now for the seasonal bonus round. In winter, your robe is all you have. You add straw stuffing between layers. It helps for about 5 minutes. Then the wind finds you anyway. You huddle near a wall like a cold dumpling with no filling. In summer, the same robe traps heat like a portable oven. You sweat. The fabric drinks it up like a vengeful sponge. There is no relief. Just more heat, more salt stains, more hallucinations about wearing nothing but clouds. Parasites are a feature, not a bug. Fleas nest in the seams of your robe. You sometimes sleep outside to let them freeze, but they always return. It's a cycle. Wear robe, feed bugs, scratch, repeat. Quirky tidbit, ancient Han noblemen sometimes wore silk underwear beneath their robes. This was not for comfort. It was to distinguish them from you. Their underwear had status. Yours is just you. No separation between skin and shame. Sometimes you fantasize about a new robe. Not silk, just something that doesn't chafe. You picture yourself walking through the market in a crisp new outfit. People turn and stare. You glow with freshness. And then the fantasy ends because someone spills soup on you. Back to itchy reality. You roll up your sleeves for work. The inside is worse than the outside. Damp wool, flecked with mildew. Smells like memories and mild panic. But you can't go without it. Bare skin in the fields means scratches, burns, insect bites, and unsolicited stares. The robe also makes movement tricky. It gets caught in everything. Tools, door frames, your own legs. Tripping over your clothing becomes a daily ritual. People laugh. You pretend it was intentional. Dignity is an endangered species. And shoes again. Those poor, valiant sandals. Their thin soles are no match for sharp rocks or surprise puddles. Your toes develop a sixth sense for pain. Every step is a gamble. The odds are not in your favor. You sometimes envy the children. They run barefoot. They don't know better. You do. And that's worse. As you scratch your shoulder for the 7th time this hour, you reflect on how your robe is less of a garment and more of a biography. Every stain has a story. Most involve spilled gruel and sweat. You tuck your robe tighter, adjust your belt, and step outside, trying to look like someone who hasn't spent the morning wrestling a flea colony. Remember, in Han China, your clothes reflect your place in the cosmos. You look down at your crusty sleeves. Clearly, the cosmos thinks you're a joke.
You wake up with a familiar, dull ache pulsing just behind your cheekbone. That's right, it's your tooth again. The molar that's been plotting your downfall for the past 6 months. It throbs with a slow, malicious rhythm, like it knows something you don't. Welcome to dental hygiene in the Han Dynasty. Or, more accurately, the complete lack of it. To start, you don't brush your teeth. Toothbrushes haven't been invented yet. Toothpaste, hilarious. What you do have is a twig. If you're lucky, it's from the fragrant Chinese privet plant, which has vaguely mint-adjacent properties. If you're not lucky, it's just a stick you chewed on after lunch. Either way, it's the only thing standing between your mouth and full-scale biohazard status. You swirl some water in your mouth, questionable river water, naturally, and call that a rinse. Congrats. You've now completed the full dental care routine of your time. And yet, the smell lingers. It's part garlic, part rot, part you. Ancient halitosis has no mercy. Your gums are swollen. They bleed when you chew. Which is unfortunate, because chewing is kind of the whole point of eating. Not that eating is any less of a dental challenge. Most food is hard, dry grains, stringy vegetables, the occasional mystery meat. Every meal is a test of endurance. And your molars? They're failing the exam. Historians still argue whether the Han elite had access to rudimentary dentistry or if they simply suffered in silence like everyone else. What is clear, you are not elite. You are squarely in the suffer in silence while trying not to scream category. You run your tongue along your teeth and count the gaps. There are more than last month. Tooth loss starts early here. By the age of 30, many mouths resemble abandoned construction sites half built, half demolished, and full of debris. Let's talk about treatments. Suppose your tooth pain gets bad enough that someone decides to help. This is not a dental appointment. This is more of a community event involving a friend, a string, and perhaps a mallet. The most advanced method available is brute force yank it out, the tool of choice pliers. Not surgical grade, stainless steel beauties, no. These are iron pincers, maybe heated to sterilize them, though it's just as likely they'll burn the surrounding flesh. One tug, 2 screams, and you're left clutching your jaw like it owes you rent money. And if your jaw becomes infected, well, medicine in the Han era operates on a delicate balance of mysticism, guesswork, and very brave leeches. Bloodletting is still in vogue because nothing says fix the tooth like draining your arm. If you're lucky, someone might burn incense near your face and chant about fire energy being trapped in your gums. This is considered a valid treatment. Quirky tidbit. Some Han Dynasty physicians believed that cavities were caused by toothworms. Invisible, squirmy little pests that burrowed into your enamel so naturally. They tried to smoke the worms out with heat, ash, and pure hope. Science, your lips are cracked, your tongue feels like parchment. You think about drinking more water to help, but then you remember water might kill you faster than a tooth infection. So you spit and carry on. There are no dental checkups, no whitening trays, no floss. Just a daily roulette wheel of will this bite, break my tooth, or just make it wobble more occasionally. You see a nobleman flash a smile with mostly intact teeth. You wonder if his family paid someone to clean them. Or maybe he's just 20 and hasn't lost the lottery yet. You lower your gaze and avoid smiling altogether. Smiles in Han China overrated. At night, the pain intensifies. You lie on your back, staring at the roof, counting the seconds between throbs. Every heartbeat sends a new jolt down your jawline. Sleep becomes an abstract concept. You shift onto your side, hoping the pressure might relieve it. It doesn't. You fantasize about an ancient cure, maybe a magical elixir brewed from mountain herbs and fish bile. You drink it twice, even if it tasted like wet charcoal. But those elixirs are reserved for emperors and generals. You're just hoping for a day without chewing pain. Historians still debate whether herbal poultices used on the gums were genuinely effective or just elaborate placebo rituals. You'd take either right now, placebo or not. You'd gladly rub a fermented cabbage leaf on your face if it would silence the agony for an hour. You see a neighbor walking around with a cloth tied tightly under his chin. He's holding a warm brick against his face. That's the Han Dynasty version of a heating pad. You make a note to try it later. Anything to quiet the rebellion inside your mouth. By morning, the tooth still aches. You bite into breakfast and flinch. A sharp pain shoots through your skull like a lightning bolt wrapped in regret. You swallow carefully, favoring the other side. It doesn't help. There is no good side. You are living in a world where mouth pain is a constant, where dental hygiene is a fantasy, and where the only real option is acceptance. Welcome to the ancient smile. It hurts. Your back cracks before your eyes even open. That's how you know the day has begun. Or rather, that the struggle resumes. You rise from the stiff straw mat you generously call a bed, matted, dusty, and full of little companions you didn't ask for. It's still dark. It's always dark when you start. The Han dynasty doesn't wait for the sun. And neither do you. The first task of the day, not stretching, not yawning working. You're either hauling grain, sweeping soil from trenches, spinning thread, or helping build something you don't get to use. You haven't had breakfast yet. Breakfast hasn't even thought about you. You're on your feet, hauling a woven basket filled with bricks the size of regrets. Han China prides itself on labor. Society is neatly tiered like a rice terrace, except you're permanently parked at the bottom. Scholars might debate the hierarchy of officials, eunuchs, artisans, and farmers. But to you, it's just those who don't carry bricks and you. You're a commoner, a nong. The dynasty calls you the backbone of the empire, which is a lovely sentiment until you realize they're referring to your actual aching spine. You plow, you plant, you harvest, and in between, you dig ditches, carry wood, and hope not to get conscripted for public works. Because let's be honest, public works means Imperial Palace Foundation you'll never see again. And you're not alone. Labor is a family business. Your wife is washing hemp fiber by hand, which means hours hunched over a cold stream, scrubbing until her fingers look like wrinkled noodles. Your children, yes. Even the 5-year-old are out gathering firewood or chasing runaway ducks that don't want to be lunch. School. That's for boys with rich fathers and shoes. You want a break, there is none. The Han calendar is a rotating door of agricultural seasons and imperial rituals. And you don't get a day off unless a freak sandstorm pins you to your house. Even then, you're expected to make repairs. Sore arm, use the other one. Pregnant work slower, but still work. Dead well. At least that's the end of your shift. You have tools. Technically, a bronze hoe, a dull sickle, a plow made of wood and good intentions. These are the tools your grandfather used. They'll break, eventually. So will you. But until then, keep digging. Historians still argue whether laborers under the Han benefited from advancements in statecraft and Confucian ethics, or whether those were just clever ways of saying work more, complain less. Here's a fun fact. There are actual government quotas. You're expected to deliver a certain amount of grain or silk every tax cycle. Can't meet the quota, they'll take it in labor. Still can't pay, welcome to state slavery, aka indentured public service. Suddenly, backbreaking becomes literal. Quirky tidbit, one Han text recommends chewing raw ginger while working to fortify the spirit. You try it once. Your mouth burns for hours, your stomach sours, and your spirit remains extremely unfortified. Today, you're helping dig a new irrigation canal. It's hot. The sun stares down like it's judging your posture. The earth is dry, cracked like your hands. Your fellow laborers are silent, their mouths dry and eyes glassy. You communicate via grunts and hopeful shrugs. One guy is clearly crying, but no one says anything. Crying uses water. Around noon, you're granted a break. Not because your body needs it, but because the overseer needs his tea. You collapse under a mulberry tree and gnaw on some cold millet. It tastes like what sadness would taste like if it were slightly grainy. You dream of soup. Not even good soup, just warm. Watery soup, you can't afford dreams. Your muscles cramp by mid-afternoon. Your shirt clings to your back, soaked with sweat. You stand in muddy water, trying to angle a shovel just right to avoid a rock the size of ambition. You fail. The shovel clinks uselessly, sending a vibration up your spine and into your soul. Women working beside you are no better off. They crush grain with stone rollers, kneel on hard-packed earth to shell beans. and carry buckets twice their body weight. Feminism hasn't arrived yet. Equality exists, but only in exhaustion. The sun eventually dips, mercifully. Your shift ends not with a whistle, but with a barked order and the gentle thud of someone fainting. You drag yourself home, or what counts as home. Your arms don't work. Your knees are throwing a rebellion. Your back wants to unionize. Dinner is thin porridge and wilted greens. You don't speak during dinner, not out of custom, but because moving your jaw hurts. Your entire body is a low-grade earthquake of pain. You stare at the ceiling. The thatch roof is leaking again. You make a mental note to fix it. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe never. You close your eyes, praying the rooster won't crow too early, but you know it will. You wake up to your favorite sensation, the cold edge of reality slapping you in the face. It's still dark outside, but the weather's already making decisions for your bones. This morning, it's winter again, which in Han China means hope you like being a popsicle. There's no insulation in your house. Not even pretend insulation, like hay stuffed into the walls. Just thin, brittle wooden planks with the kind of draft that could carry away small livestock. You're wrapped in your only blanket, a tattered piece of hemp cloth that's seen better dynasties. Your breath fogs the air as you exhale, forming little clouds of despair. Winter nights are long, too long, and you don't sleep so much as survive unconsciousness. You huddle together with your family under one roof, literally pressed against each other like dumplings in a steamer. Only without the steam, or warmth, or edible joy. You crawl out from the warmth of body heat and face the floor. It's frozen. Not cold, frozen. Your feet greet the ice with a silent scream. And you brace for the worst part, getting dressed. Spoiler alert, your clothes are also frozen. You shake them like dried seaweed, trying to soften them enough to not snap in half. Still, there's work to do. There's always work. The weather doesn't care. In fact, the weather is your manager now. If you're farming, you deal with frost that kills your seedlings. If you're spinning silk, your hands go numb before noon. If you're building, your bricks are frozen together like ancient Lego sets. Good luck separating them. Historians still argue whether Han meteorological records reflect meaningful climate patterns or simply chronic human suffering. Either way, your frost-bitten toes are not debating. They are protesting. Fast forward to summer. You'd think it gets better. You'd be wrong. The heat arrives like a personal vendetta. There are no fans, no ice, no shorts. You're still wearing the same scratchy, heavy robe you wore in winter because it's your only robe. It's soaked with sweat by breakfast. And the sweat never stops. You are, essentially, soup with opinions. Your house transforms into a kiln. The sun stares through your roof like it's running an experiment. The air inside is so hot, you consider moving outdoors until you realize the outdoors includes mosquitoes the size of regrets and flies who treat your sweat as an all-you-can-eat buffet. The bugs are relentless. You swat them until your arms tire, then you just surrender and let them land. You become a buffet. A very grumpy buffet. One quirky hand superstition says if a mosquito bites your left hand, it's a sign of upcoming fortune. You get bitten on your left hand 42 times. You are still not rich. Rainstorms, oh yes. Those come too, but instead of cooling you down, they flood your fields and wash away the last 3 days of planting. The muddy roads become slip and slide death traps. You slip, you slide, you say something unprintable about nature. You fall face first into the rice paddy. There are no seasons, really. Just different flavors of hardship. Spring brings allergies, weeds, and 1,000 things to plant. Autumn means frantic harvesting and praying the grain doesn't rot. And all year round, the air quality is, let's say, textured. Smoke from cooking fires, dust from roads, and that delightful hint of livestock all fuse into a scent you'll carry with you forever. Literally, you can't wash it out. Historians note that the Han Chinese made great progress in documenting climate and celestial changes. But none of those records mention how socks feel when they're wet and never dry. There's no wardrobe rotation, no summer linens or winter coats. You wear what you own, and what you own has decided that your suffering is its job. In winter, you layer your shame. In summer, you dream of nudity but remain trapped in decency. The heat makes you hallucinate about rivers. Not to drink just to dive in and disappear. Your skin breaks out from the friction of wet fabric. Rashes are given, itchy spots constant. You scratch so much you could be mistaken for a percussion instrument. And let's not forget the winds. Cold winds in the north cut like knives. Sand-laced gusts from the west turn your cheeks into sandpaper. If the weather had a personality, it would be a vengeful ex. Still, you trudge on. The crops won't plant themselves. The silk won't spin. The roof won't fix itself when hail turns it into confetti. So, you adapt. You drink hot soup in summer to sweat out the heat. You stuff straw in your clothes in winter like a makeshift human scarecrow. But mostly, you dream. Of shade. Of fire. Of a day when your body temperature isn't trying to kill you. You reach for water. The most basic human need. The thing you assume will save you and immediately regret that optimism. Because in Han Dynasty China, water is less a source of life and more a daily lottery with dysentery as the jackpot. The well, if your village is lucky enough to have one, is shared by everyone. And by everyone, we mean people, animals, and bacteria on holiday. The bucket rope squeaks as it's pulled up, revealing cloudy water filled with floating mysteries, bits of hay, insect wings, possibly a ghost of a frog. You pretend it's soup. You drink anyway. Most people don't boil their water. Firewood is precious, time is tight, and you're already late for field work. So you sip and pray. Your stomach starts a countdown. You feel every gurgle like a betrayal. And when it hits, well, we already discussed toilets. Let's just say, you start eyeing every shrub like a sanctuary. Bathing is theoretically encouraged. In practice, it's the equivalent of organizing a parade. First, you need enough water, which involves hauling heavy buckets from the river, then heating it over a slow, smoky fire. By the time you're ready to bathe, you've already sweat enough to require a second one. So you skip it. Most people do. You wash your face with a damp rag and consider yourself glamorous. A full-body scrub is reserved for festivals, weddings, or if someone really important dies. And even then, it's more symbolic than sanitary. There's a belief that bathing too often weakens the body. The logic pores open, evil enters. And who are you to argue with ancient biochemistry? One influential medical text warned against over-cleansing for fear of draining chi. Another suggested onion-based steam as an alternative. Congratulations, you now smell like dinner and regret. Your clothes, stiff with dust and sweat, now double as your exfoliating tool. They scrape, they cling. They remind you constantly that hygiene is an unattainable dream. You itch, you stink, but so does everyone else. So it's basically camouflage. Historians still argue whether the average Han citizen had better access to public bathhouses than later dynasties. One fringe theory suggests that bathhouses served more as social gathering spots than real hygiene centers, meaning they were loud, crowded, and yes, still filthy. As for diseases, oh, they thrive. Cholera, typhoid, intestinal worms, your intestines host more life than your village. You share drinking water with pigs, ducks, and toddlers. You eat food washed in river runoff and drink soup flavored with yesterday's storm. Boiling water would help. Sure, but you're out of wood, out of time, and frankly, out of energy. You hear whispers of medicinal springs deep in the mountains, magical waters that heal the sick and restore vitality. But you can't walk that far. You're already late for your next chore. And besides, the last guy who tried it came back with a sprained ankle and a leech in his sock. You dream of a future unimaginable, centuries ahead, where water is clean, clear, and flows from shiny metal snakes in the wall, where you can turn a handle and summon warmth. But here in the Han Dynasty, you turn a handle and get absolutely nothing. There are gods for rain, rivers, wells. You try praying, you offer coins, you drop flower petals into the stream. Nothing changes. Water remains indifferent. It is your constant need and your constant threat. So you ration. One bowl to drink, one bowl to clean, one bowl for whatever disaster happens next. You live your life by the bucket. You are 70% water and 100% doubt. And just when you think you've adapted, the drought comes, crops shrivel, the well dries up, people panic. You dig a pit hoping to strike moisture, but all you get is dirt and sunstroke. You look at the river, now reduced to a puddle with dreams of being a stream. You cry. Your tears evaporate instantly. But you endure, not because you're strong, but because there's no alternative. You keep hauling, sipping, washing, hoping. You live in a constant state of thirst, thirst for relief, thirst for safety, thirst for something that doesn't taste like pond scum and regret. And tomorrow you'll do it all again. Hey guys, tonight we're taking a quiet walk into a world full of scrolls, sandals, and silent suffering. You're not a warrior, or a philosopher, or a temple priest. No. You've drawn the short straw, you're a scribe in ancient Greece. The ink-stained fingers, the endless scroll copying, the chronic lower back pain. It's all yours now. You wake up, stiff and itchy, in a tiny windowless room tucked above a goatskin tannery. The smell isn't quite vintage parchment, it's more expired feta meets wet stone. You probably won't survive this week. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time. I love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes, and your first thought is, why are my fingers already sore? Oh right. You fell asleep mid-scroll again. Papyrus fragments have tattooed themselves to your cheek overnight. Your pillow, a rolled-up sack of olive pits. Your bed, a mat of straw that might once have been yellow, but is now the color of regret. The sun has just crept over the tiled rooftops of Athens, and already someone's shouting about fish in the street. Outside, it's a chorus of carts, sandals, and stray dogs doing their best philosophical barking. Inside, it's quieter unless you count the constant buzz of fleas planning their next raid on your ankles. You rise, stretch your back, it cracks like broken pottery, and immediately stub your toe on your ink jar. A great omen. You're 23 years old, which is practically middle-aged by scribe standards. Life expectancy is optimistic. You were supposed to be transcribing a shipment list last night, but fell asleep somewhere between 10 amphorae and 1 goat, possibly drunk. You shuffle over to the wash basin, which is really just a cracked clay bowl of yesterday's rinse water, and splash a few droplets onto your face. The water is lukewarm and smells faintly of egg. You could change it, but you're conserving water for ink making. Priorities. There's no mirror, but if there were, you'd see dark ink smudges around your eyes and a hairstyle best described as papyrus windblown. You grab your hymation, a woolen wrap that's both your blanket and your uniform, and pull it over your tunic. It itches instantly. Welcome back to the ancient world. Downstairs, your landlord is already banging on the door. You owe him 2 days' worth of rent or 3 scrolls. Depending on your barter arrangement, he's muttering something about late delivery to the tax office. You nod, offer a polite apology, and promise the scrolls by sundown. You have no intention of finishing them by sundown. You chew a bite of leftover barley bread, it's hard enough to chip a tooth. Which would be funnier if it hadn't already happened once last season. The bread pairs perfectly with the sense of impending deadline. You sip watered-down wine from a chipped clay cup and pretend it's coffee. It isn't. You step outside and immediately squint. The sunlight bounces off white marble like Zeus himself is holding a mirror up to your face. The agora is already bustling with citizens who woke up on the right side of history merchants. Politicians, idle philosophers with olive oil-slicked hair arguing over metaphysics. You, meanwhile, are mentally cataloguing every ink stain on your tunic. And your day hasn't even started. There's a saying around here, the sword is mighty, but the scroll gets copied 3 times before lunch. Or at least, it should be a saying. You're not important enough to coin sayings. Still, you are literate, and in ancient Greece. That's technically elite. Technically. But being able to read doesn't mean you're respected. You're the invisible machinery of democracy copying tax laws, debts, supply inventories, death lists. And when the ink smudges, it's your fault. When the math doesn't add up, also your fault. When someone says they never borrowed that much grain, guess who's getting questioned? Historians still argue whether scribes like you were revered intellectuals or glorified ink slaves. You'd love to join the debate if you had the time. Or weren't so tired. or had even a single minute to spare between transcription sessions. Because today, like every other day, you're expected to do the work of 5 men, using tools that haven't evolved since Homer. Your pen, a sliver of reed sharpened by chewing on one end. Your ink, a handmade potion of soot, vinegar, and a dash of saltwater tears. The quill breaks constantly. The ink clogs, and your right wrist hums with the dull throb of carpal tunnel, 2,000 years before the diagnosis exists. And you haven't even gone to the toilet yet. But that's a problem for future you once your landlord stops hovering. Right now, you just nod, smile politely, and shuffle toward your little table. A new scroll awaits, blank and full of silent judgment. The sun is rising, the ink is drying, and the ancient Greek workday waits for no one, especially not a scribe. Your body protests with every step toward your desk. And it's not even a desk. Really, it's more of a wooden plank balanced precariously on 2 crates, one of which wobbles in protest every time you rest your elbow. The plank is covered with ink blotches, dried wax, and the faint outlines of what you think might be yesterday's lunch. You sit on a stool so lopsided. It's become a test of core strength just to remain upright. Congratulations, you're now officially working. The scroll in front of you is blank, smugly so. It seems to whisper, "Go ahead, impress me." You dip your reed pen into the ink, a mixture you carefully boiled 2 days ago, using soot scraped from your cooking pit and a bit of vinegar that was almost too spoiled to use. And then, of course, there's the gluey bit of gum arabic, imported from gods know where, sold by a merchant who definitely swindled you. You begin writing, slowly, carefully, and it smears, instantly. You clench your jaw and whisper one of the few things in ancient Greek that's definitely not appropriate for a PG-13 audience. You wipe the blot with a rag that was once a sock and try again. Your fingers now trembling from both caffeine withdrawal and pure existential dread. After a few hours of steady copying, the letters begin to blur. Your hand cramps into a claw, and you're questioning every choice that brought you here, from learning your letters to agreeing to work for barley wages and exposure. Exposure doesn't pay the rent. Every now and then, a rat scurries across the floor near the wall where moisture seeps up through cracked stone. It's not alarming anymore. In fact, he's practically a co-worker. You've named him Aristotle. He's a terrible philosopher, but at least he doesn't critique your penmanship. You hear voices outside, laughter, conversation, the odd donkey bray. You do not participate. You have deadlines. And also, you smell faintly of warm ink and desperation. Around midday, your landlord sends up a guest. It's a tax official, carrying a scroll that needs copying by nightfall. It's dense, it's in bad handwriting, and it's double-sided. Your eye twitches involuntarily. The official offers a single olive as payment. Not a jar, one single olive. You accept. Obviously, the scribe life isn't glamorous, but it is vital. In theory, without you, contracts can't be filed, debts aren't recorded, and shipping manifests turn into chaos. That said, no one thanks you, ever. In fact, your most consistent interaction with others is someone yelling. You misspelled drachma again, even though their own handwriting looks like it was done mid-seizure on horseback. Historians still argue whether scribes in ancient Greece were trained in formal schools or apprenticed privately under mentors. You were trained by your uncle, who was partially blind, fully bitter, and deeply fond of sarcasm. He called you Myopicus Maximus. You laughed the first time, not the 12th. To stay awake, you chew dried fig slices between lines. They stick to your teeth and make your mouth feel like you're smuggling sap. But they keep you conscious, which is more than can be said for your left leg, which has gone entirely numb from sitting cross-legged so long. Occasionally, a temple priest drops by with a commission to copy verses or ritual prayers. These are the good jobs because they come with actual coins and, sometimes, snacks. Last week, you got a stale sesame cake. It was the highlight of your month. Then there are the philosophical texts. Oh, the endless circular debates about virtue, nature, fate. You copy the same argument 3 times over in different voices. And by the end, you don't know who believes what anymore. 1 minute, you're convinced the soul is immortal, the next, You're trying to remember if you even have a soul or if it left when you copied the Iliad 4 times during plague season. You scratch your head, dislodging a bit of papyrus dust, and glance out the window slit. There's a boy in the alley, spinning in circles, chasing a hoop. He's laughing. A philosopher once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." But right now, the unexamined life without scrolls, ink or deadlines looks pretty fantastic. By late afternoon, your fingers are permanently curved. You've stained 3 scrolls, broken 2 pens, and used up your last bit of soot. You consider burning one of your own finished scrolls just to harvest the ash. You won't. Of course, that would be sacrilege, or worse, wasteful. Still, a part of you imagines the freedom of running out of ink. No more lists, no more copying. Just silence, maybe even sleep. But then again, no ink means no pay. And no pay means no bread. And no bread means, well, we'll cover that in the next section. The sun begins to tilt westward. A mosquito buzzes near your ear. You swat at it and knock over your pen. Ink splashes across the scroll. Of course it does. You sigh, pick up another sheet, and start again. Now you've had just enough sleep deprivation and scroll ink to think it might be time for a short break. And you're right, your body agrees. Your spine is begging. Your stomach growling like Cerberus guarding the underworld. But first, nature calls. Here's the thing about being a scribe in ancient Greece. Your access to knowledge far outweighs your access to plumbing. You grab the clay oil lamp, which sputters like it might give up on life any second, and shuffle out into the alleyway. This, unfortunately, is where you go to relieve yourself. Yes, the alleyway. You hug the wall in a squat, only achievable after months of inflexible stool practice. Nearby is a chamber pot. It is, at best, decorative. At worst, a biohazard. You avoid it because yesterday it overflowed, and yes, it's still there. Just bubbling. You may have read about the grandeur of Greek architecture, marble columns, glorious amphitheaters. But those never mention the smell. Spoiler, it's a combination of soured fish, yesterday's bread soup, warm feces, and something floral but aggressive. You once made the mistake of trying to trace the floral scent. You found a dead goat wearing a garland. Toilet paper cute. There's a sponge on a stick, affectionately nicknamed xylospongian. Shared, communal. No one knows who used it last. You whisper a prayer and opt for pebbles instead. Smooth ones, ideally. Scholars still argue whether leaves, cloth, or even broken ceramics were preferred. You suspect none of the above. You finish your business, and as you retie your rope belt, Greek fashion tunics, but make it drafty. You remember there's no sewage system. Not unless you count gravity and collective denial. Everything seeps downhill. If you live near the agora, that's downhill. Good luck during rain. Public toilets do exist. They're basically stone benches with holes carved out over a shallow trough. No privacy. Just a row of half-naked philosophers discussing metaphysics, while someone attempts not to make eye contact. Toilets in ancient Greece are less sanitation and more social experiment, and often a small public event. You once tried visiting a temple, hoping the gods might provide better facilities. What you got was a pit behind the building and a crow that watched too intently. You named it Socrates. It judges your technique, every time. The rich, those lucky enough to own 2 sandals and a goat, sometimes have a chamber room with a lid. Luxury. Though, to be fair, the lid is usually a cracked plank with a rock on it. And their servants, who you absolutely aren't jealous of, you are. Take the waste outside at dawn, which means the roads are lovingly lined with contributions from every household. Garbage day every day. Some city officials claim to clean the streets regularly. Historians still argue whether that means once a month, or simply shouting, "Don't step there," and hoping for the best. The smell follows you like a curse. You wipe your sandals in a patch of sand and head back inside. Except your foot hits something mushy. Nope. You're not investigating. You take one last deep breath, which is a mistake, and return to your scrolls. The ink, at least, doesn't smell like despair. Not strongly. Anyway, by the way, plumbing won't become moderately functional for another couple of centuries. And when it does, you'll be long dead. Possibly of tetanus, more likely of shame. Oh, and if you were hoping to bathe off the stench later, stay tuned. The next section features food, but spoiler alert, that won't help either. You're back at your wooden writing desk, or rather, plank on rock, trying to forget what just happened outside. But as your stomach audibly protests, it reminds you that surviving as a scribe in ancient Greece isn't just about scrolls and sanitation, it's also about what's for lunch, and breakfast, and dinner, which, conveniently, are often the exact same thing. You don't so much eat as you endure. Today's menu features a steaming bowl of maza a thick, barley porridge with the personality of drywall paste and the consistency of pre-chewed bread, barley the grain that makes you miss rice, oats, or frankly, your dignity. It's not hot, it's not cold, it's just existing, like your will to live. You dip a crust of black bread into the porridge. Crust is a generous term. This bread has the texture of sandstone and the flavor of disappointment. You once dropped a loaf on your foot and limped for 2 days. Historians still argue whether Greek bakers hardened the crusts intentionally to use them as weapons, currency, or an early version of a burglar alarm. And this isn't even the worst part, because the flour often mixed with sawdust. Or if you're lucky, ground chickpea hulls, protein, they say. Wood chips, you reply. Spices don't make yourself laugh. You use olive oil for flavor unless you can't afford it. In which case, you use a blessing from the god saltwater, or a moldy fig. Once, you tried fermenting wild herbs for seasoning and accidentally created a laxative so potent the priest stopped speaking to you. Meat, you're hilarious. Occasionally, a stray pigeon sacrifices itself to the stew, but mostly your protein comes from lentils, beans, or fermented fish, paste gyros, which smells like regret and tastes like betrayal. It's basically ancient Greece's answer to, what if tuna could punish you? Drinks you'd think wine would help, and it does, briefly, except it's mixed with water murky, parasite-rich water that may or may not send you into 3-day gastrointestinal combat. It's a gamble. Tipsy or typhoid milk is rare, usually from goats, often sour, and sometimes so thick it needs to be chewed. But you drink it anyway, because thirst is a stronger motivator than taste. Historians still argue whether goat milk was a delicacy or a punishment. Now, if you were a philosopher or a well-placed official, you'd enjoy cheese, honey, olives, maybe even dates. But you're a scribe. You write about banquets you'll never attend while chewing a barley brick that might outlive you. Your mealtime entertainment is a neighbor's baby crying and the distant sound of a pottery vendor arguing with a man who may have stolen a vase and used it as a helmet. The soundtrack of the city angry goats, aggressive sneezing, and stomachs singing their sad symphonies. The good news, your diet keeps you lean. The bad news, you're not fit, you're malnourished. There's a difference. Your hair is thinning. Your skin looks like it's permanently surprised. You're 25 and look 50. On the plus side, nobody expects you to live past 40. Retirement planning, never heard of her. And if you're wondering about dessert, here's a treat: dried figs, which you cherish until you bite into one and discover it's home to a protein source with legs. You scream internally, maybe externally. No one reacts. You drink the last of your wine-water hybrid and look down at your bowl. Somehow, it's not empty. It's multiplying. Either the porridge is sentient, or your spoon has unionized and gone on strike. You set the bowl aside and declare defeat. Eating in ancient Greece is not an experience. It's a test of endurance. And you fail. Daily. But don't worry, at least you're dressed for the occasion. Or not. That's coming up next. The first thing you notice about your clothes is they haven't changed. Not just unchanged today, but unchanged since the Dionysia festival 3 moons ago, when someone spilled wine on your tunic and called it a blessing. You've worn that same tunic every day since. It now smells like old barley, dried sweat, and something vaguely philosophical. You don't ask questions. Ancient Greek fashion for scribes. One word: chiton, a simple rectangle of coarse wool, fastened with brooches or rope. If you're feeling spicy, you belt it with leftover string from your scrolls. You tell yourself it's minimalist. It's actually just the only option. There's no cotton, no linen, no laundry rotation. You sleep, eat, write and sneeze into the same itchy, slightly crunchy outfit. It doesn't fit. It hangs. And not in a stylish toga at the Forum way, more in a wet blanket on a clothesline kind of way. You own one pair of sandals, leather, if you're lucky, rope, if you're not. But they offer all the comfort of cardboard soaked in vinegar. The straps dig into your ankles like they're being paid to sabotage your circulation. Walking, it's a gamble. Running, you'd rather crawl. Historians still argue whether Greek sandals were designed for function or just to slowly destroy morale. If it rains, the wool gets wet and holds moisture like a toxic sponge. And if it's hot, surprise wool also bakes you like a fig wrapped in sadness. The Greeks didn't invent air conditioning, but they did invent tough it out and stop whining. So here you are, sweating under the sun, your tunic clinging to you like a needy cousin, washing your clothes. Absolutely. In theory, but water is limited, soap is rare, and scrubbing a wool tunic on a rock is less laundry day and more wool-based violence. You once tried washing your chiton in the river. It came back heavier, greyer, and possibly sentient. You haven't dared try again. Underwear, that's adorable. Greeks didn't really do undergarments. Unless you were a hoplite wearing a perizoma, a type of loincloth that doubled as a punishment. You're going commando, in every sense of the word. Parasites, of course, lice, fleas, and their extended family. You scratch. You pretend it's casual. It's not. You once counted how many bugs lived in your tunic for fun. You lost count at 57. They've unionized. You consider shaving your head, after all. Baldness was common. But razors are bronze and mostly designed for cutting, not grooming. A misstep could cost you an ear. So instead, you scratch. Again, the wealthy. They have multiple outfits. Silks from the East, perfumes from Egypt, dyed fabrics in deep purples and blues. You, however, are dressed like a clay pot with self-esteem issues. The only dye you know is the one in your ink pot. And it smells better than your armpits. Fragrance. You crush herbs and rub them on your neck like you're marinating. It only works until noon. Then the sun turns you into a mobile stew. Your best friend once mistook your scent for burnt chickpeas. You didn't correct him. The good news, no one judges. Everyone smells like labor and despair. You fit in beautifully. Still, you sometimes fantasize about clean linen, soft cotton, or dare you dream elastic waistbands. But these are myths, like centaurs or a full night's sleep. So you tug at your tunic, ignore the fleas colonizing your shoulder, and get ready to return to work. With your chiton clinging to your thighs like wet newspaper. You set off again, dressed not for success, but for survival. Your teeth hurt. Constantly. Not just oops, I bet. Something weird hurt, more like every molar is auditioning to explode, kind of hurt. It's a low hum of agony in your jaw, punctuated by sudden stabs when you accidentally chew on the wrong side. And the wrong side. That's both sides. In ancient Greece, dental hygiene is an idea whose time has not come. There are no toothbrushes, no floss, no toothpaste. At best, you've got a twig and a hope. Sometimes, you might chew on a bit of bark or use ashes to scrub your teeth. Yes, ashes, because nothing says fresh breath like cremated wood dust and the slow decline of enamel. Historians still argue whether the Greeks actually brushed their teeth with these sooty methods or whether they just lived with constant halitosis and prayed to Apollo about it. Your gums bleed sometimes. Well, often. They swell, they throb, and they don't get better. The gods have not blessed your mouth. Your breath could repel armies, and you suspect it once did. Cavities are common. And they're not treated, they're endured. There's no Novocaine, no drills, no chairs with tiny sinks. There's just a friend with strong hands, a bronze tool that looks suspiciously like a meat skewer, and some wine to dull the pain. Emphasis on some. You still scream. In fact, pulling teeth in ancient Greece is such a violent act that it's often accompanied by binding the patient to a bench. You bite down on leather, and if you're lucky, you pass out early. If not, the tooth comes out anyway, along with a few shards of courage. The irony, your diet isn't even that sugar-heavy. You're mostly chewing grain, vegetables, and dried olives. But without cleaning, the leftover bits of barley and dates turn your mouth into a compost heap. And unlike your scrolls, nothing written in your mouth gets erased. Decay is the editor now. Toothaches aren't just painful, they're disabling. Try concentrating on your scribe duties when every letter you carve feels like it echoes in your jaw. Try reciting Aristotle when it feels like Socrates is jabbing your molar with a stylus. Every sentence tastes like metal and regret. There's no dentist, but there is a healer who recommends tying a string soaked in garlic around your wrist to relieve the pain. This does nothing for your tooth, but everyone avoids you, which is almost a comfort. And when things get worse, when an abscess forms or a tooth cracks, you visit the iatros, a general healer. He suggests bloodletting to balance your humors. You say the problem is in your mouth. He says the problem is in your liver. You stare at each other for a long time, then go home and cry quietly into your tunic. Some wealthier citizens might have access to imported remedies, clove oil from the east, maybe crushed mint leaves. But you gnaw fennel stalks and pretend it's helping. Spoiler, it's not. The worst part is how common it all is. You look around the agora, and everyone's got that same swollen cheek shuffle, that same half-smile grimace that says, "I'm trying not to scream." Ancient Greece is a symposium of silent suffering, held together by wine, philosophy, and sheer molar endurance. There's even a phrase you've heard, "the tooth chooses the day." You assume it means, at some point, one of your teeth will randomly erupt into pain and ruin everything. They do. Frequently. One quirky remedy, burnt mouse. Seriously, some healers claim that crushing a burnt mouse into powder and applying it to your gums can ease dental pain. You haven't tried it. Yet. But you're getting dangerously close. You lie awake some nights, jaw pounding, mouth dry, and wonder how the gods, those paragons of divine perfection, let something as simple as chewing become your Achilles heel. Your scrolls might be neatly copied, your syntax might be flawless, but inside your mouth it's an ancient war zone. And you are losing. You're up before sunrise again. Because scribes in ancient Greece don't get to be sleepy philosophers reclining with wine and clever aphorisms. No, your life is labor, not the glamorous carve epic poetry into marble kind. The kind that starts with hauling amphorae and ends with aching wrists and ink-stained everything. You think, maybe, today you'll have a light day. But that's not a thing. Light days are reserved for people who aren't born into your station. Your fingers are already sore from yesterday's scroll-copying marathon. And your spine still remembers that time you tried to sit cross-legged on a stone floor for 4 hours. Who knew the Iliad could break your back? The truth, a scribe in the classical period is essentially an overworked photocopier with a pulse. You're copying legal documents, trade inventories, land records, and the occasional soul-crushing love letter some aristocrat wants rewritten on papyrus with perfect lettering. You don't get to compose poetry. You replicate it. Slowly, with a reed stylus that frays when you breathe too hard. It's quiet work, but exhausting in the way only slow, repetitive tasks can be. Think copying a 200-line tax inventory twice, because the first copy had a smudge, and the magistrate thinks your epsilon looks too much like a sigma. You take breaks, sure, but break means carrying water jugs for your master, or being loaned out to help count wheat for a shipping record, or mopping ink spills from the floor with a scrap of your own ruined tunic. Leisure, you see, is a privilege. Your wrists never really stop moving. Women, they're not scribes, not in the formal sense, but they're working too, and arguably harder, grinding grain, weaving cloth, cleaning, child-rearing. And if you're a woman born into slavery or poverty, add hauling water from a public fountain and scrubbing laundry with river stones until your fingers go numb. Historians still argue whether certain women acted as informal record keepers or domestic scribes in wealthier households. But regardless, no one's sitting around composing hymns to Apollo. Meanwhile, children aren't exactly free agents either. By the time they can carry a basket, they're part of the labor force. Boys might be sent to learn a trade, or if they're lucky and their family isn't dirt poor, they might study at a local school. You weren't lucky. You got apprenticed early and learned fast, or else. There's a romantic myth that scribes are respected for their literacy. But in reality, you're just the literate version of a plow, useful but replaceable. You're there to produce scrolls, count olives, draft contracts. No one applauds you for flawless spelling. You just don't get yelled at that day. The tools of your trade betray you too. Ink dries too fast or too slow. The stylus catches on the rough papyrus and tears a hole through 2 days' work. That's your lunch break, gone in a puff of swear words. Soft PG-13 ones, of course. You start early, end late. And the sun is not your friend. Summer means sweltering afternoons where the ink literally evaporates before it touches the page. Winter, you can't feel your fingers, and the reed stylus feels like a shard of ice. Your joints creak like unoiled doors. Some days, your tasks involve hauling boxes of scrolls up steep stone steps, or organizing records in damp basements filled with mildew and philosophical despair. And when you're not writing, you're translating, which means double the stress where one wrong word and a merchant loses a shipment, or a soldier gets the wrong deployment orders. Quirky fact, some scribes apparently used a pet parrot to read aloud texts, training the bird to repeat common words. You don't have a parrot, you have a headache and a mosquito bite in a place you can't scratch without social consequences. You dream sometimes about quitting, moving to a farm, becoming a potter. But then you remember pottery means baking clay in 100-degree F kilns and inhaling dust until your lungs resemble Pompeii. So, back to the scrolls. You work until your eyes blur, until you can't tell alpha from delta, until the symbols swim like tadpoles across your vision. You write through pain, through hunger, through endless requests from people who think scribe means can you just copy this entire naval manifest by dinner? And yet, there's pride buried somewhere deep. You hold history in your hands, even if you're just rewriting it for the 40th time. Even if your name never makes it onto a scroll, you exist between the lines. Tired, ink-streaked, invisible but essential. The sky in Athens is a kind of aggressive blue, bright, cloudless, merciless. You blink into it as the sun rises, knowing full well it's going to be another day of climate-based torment. Ancient Greece is beautiful on postcards, not so much when you're living in it without air conditioning, central heating, or even a hat that isn't made of straw and regret. It's summer, which means you wake up sweaty and stay that way. There is no cool of the morning. The morning is a sneak attack. The stone walls of your little home radiate the heat they absorbed yesterday. Like a bread oven someone forgot to turn off. Your linen tunic is supposed to help, but it's about as breathable as a wet napkin. You think maybe sitting outside will help. It won't. You step out and immediately inhale a lungful of hot air that smells like dust. Goat. And body odor a sensory cocktail you'd never choose but can't escape. The sun bakes the dirt into hard clumps. And the ground is too hot to walk barefoot on. Not that sandals help much. They're just 2 flaps of leather and a prayer. Insects adore this time of year. They bite. They buzz. They crawl into your bedding and leave you itching like you rolled in poison ivy. There's no bug spray. No netting. You just deal. A tiny fly circles your ear like it has a vendetta. It does. Historians still argue whether the Greeks understood heat stroke, but you're pretty sure they felt it. Your vision swims by noon, and shade is a myth unless you're lucky enough to work indoors. Which, as a scribe, you do but guess what indoor air isn't much better. The ink thickens. Your fingers stick to the papyrus. Sweat drips onto the scroll. Hope you didn't just ruin an official decree. Winter equally delightful. You wake up stiff from the cold because the stone floors suck all the heat out of your bones. There's no fireplace unless you're rich and no insulation. You pile on every tunic you own, both of them. Wrap yourself in a rough wool cloak that smells vaguely of sheep and mildew. And pray the wind doesn't sneak in through the cracks in the wall. It always does. There are no glass windows, just shutters. You open them, and the cold punches you in the face like a disgruntled Spartan. Your breath fogs up, and your ink freezes in the inkwell. You warm your fingers over a candle and try not to set your sleeves on fire. You'd think at least you'd sleep well, being exhausted and all, but nights are either sweltering or freezing. Summer nights you toss and turn on a straw mattress that feels like sleeping on angry hay. Winter nights you curl into yourself like a terrified armadillo, trying to conserve every bit of heat your body can muster. Spoiler, it's not much. Your clothes don't help. They're not weather appropriate because there's no such thing as seasonal wardrobe when you can't afford 2 tunics. Your cloak does double duty daywear, nightwear, blanket, rain cover, and emotional support garment. But it never dries out properly. Nothing does. Your entire house smells like damp regret. Quirky fact, some Greeks wore petasos hats in summer, wide-brimmed and floppy. You lost yours last week to a particularly rude gust of wind and now just squint resentfully into the sun. There's a thunderstorm once in a while, and you get excited. Finally, something to break the monotony. But it's brief, loud, and mostly decorative. The rain comes in sideways and soaks your bedding. Then the roof leaks. Then you remember you forgot to bring in the firewood. It's soaked too. You complain, of course. But complaining doesn't make it better. It just passes the time while you walk to the agora to get more ink, wondering if this will be the day you slip on wet stone, break your wrist, and end your writing career forever. But look on the bright side, you haven't been struck by lightning. Yet, the weather isn't just uncomfortable, it defines your daily limits. When it's hot, you slow down. When it's cold, you ache. And when it's both, because why not, it becomes a kind of Greek tragedy. Starring you, a very tired human scroll machine, and a drafty house with a leaky roof. Still, you endure. Because what else are you going to do? You wrap your cloak tighter, grit your teeth against the wind or sun, and copy the next line of Plato. You step outside to fetch a bucket of water. A simple task, a daily routine, a high-risk activity. The well is down the lane, a generous word for a dirt path scattered with chicken droppings and the occasional goat with boundary issues. The sun's already glaring overhead, turning the path into a dust and sweat oven. You carry your empty clay jug, which is heavier than it looks, especially when your back's still sore from sleeping on something that can best be described as a sack of tired sticks. There is no tap, there is no pipe, there is only the well, and it's public, which means you're likely to spend more time waiting than drawing water. Other people are already in line women, slaves, old men with identical jugs, and one small child with the confident stare of someone who has spilled 3 jugs this week and is ready to spill another. You nod politely and wait. Finally, your turn. You lower the bucket, which creaks on a rope that looks older than democracy. Splash, crank, lift, fill your jug. The water is tepid, slightly cloudy. Maybe a fly is doing the backstroke. But that's fine, because this, friend, is the cleanest water you're getting today. Probably this week. You walk home slowly. A full jug is heavy. A cracked jug is a disaster. You cradle it like it's your only child, and in this world, it might as well be one stumble, one sharp rock, and that's it. You're thirsty, the floor's wet, and the neighbor's dog is licking up your hydration. Once home, you ration the water, some for drinking, some for washing your hands after writing all day, maybe a tiny bit for cleaning that ink blot on your sleeve that's now permanent because washing is, well, let's talk about that. Bathing in ancient Greece isn't a given. It's a social event, a production, for some. It's done at the public baths. For others, it's a rare luxury performed at home with cold water, a basin, and a lot of grimacing. You lather with olive oil because soap isn't a thing yet, and then scrape it off with a strigil. That's right. No rinsing, no bubbles, just oil and a blunt metal scraper. Welcome to the spa. Historians still argue whether daily bathing was common among all citizens or just the fancy ones. But you, humble scribe, are lucky to bathe once a week. Maybe. And when you do, the water doesn't feel clean, it feels like a gamble. Because while that water may look clear, it's carrying stories, bacteria, worms, and enough microscopic enemies to declare war on your immune system. If you're feeling brave, maybe you bathe in a river. It's poetic, it's scenic, it's filled with fish droppings and occasional dead things. But who's keeping score? You wash quickly, eyes darting for snakes, trying not to swallow anything. And let's not forget, people drink that same river water, which means every illness from diarrhea to full-blown epidemic is floating nearby. One wrong sip, and your week goes from mildly inconvenient to intestines are staging a rebellion. Quirky fact, some Greeks believed bathing opened your pores and made you more vulnerable to disease. So in winter, many skipped it altogether. They weren't wrong about the pores. They just didn't know what germs were. The result, a community of moderately informed nudists, scraping olive oil off their bodies and hoping the gods liked their scent. When you do manage to clean yourself, there's no towel, just air drying, maybe a cloth if you're fancy. Your skin itches. Your hair, if not shaved off, turns into a clay sculpture shaped by dust, oil, and time. But here's the kicker, you still have to drink that water. No filter, no boiling. Just trust. You fill your wooden cup, squint into the liquid like a nervous detective, and hope today is not the day the worms win. There is no bottled water, no lemon wedge, no hydration apps reminding you to sip. Your hydration strategy is don't die. But even with all this, you persevere. You write, you translate, you blot your scrolls with trembling fingers, knowing that at the end of the day, you'll walk that dusty path again. Because water is everything, and everything is trying to take it from you.